Although they are generally considered a flash in the pan, their staying power and popularity is ever present. They make the masses swoon and sway as they sweep us off our feet with their swagger. FYI! We are going backstage past the buff bouncers as we blow the lid off boy bands on this week's episode of FYI. Welcome to For Your Info.
En inglés.
You got it. Hello, amigos, and welcome to another exciting edition of FYI For Your Inglés, the topic-based podcast where we look at a lot of different topics and we delve into them in hopes to teach you some English. And by the looks of it, al parecer, it seems like a lot of you are learning English and you're excited about all the other things you're learning aside from English. Because one of my taglines for this podcast is learn so much more than English. And as I say, if you're paying attention, you're learning about Harley Davidsons, you're learning about baseball, beer, wine, and all other interesting topics. And let's be honest, the more things you can talk about, the better you are at conversation. And one of the good things about the topics we look at here on this show is they don't tend to be too controversial. They're topics that you could talk about in any environment. And today we're going to tackle boy bands, or as I said in the intro, we're going to blow the lid off boy bands. And to blow the lid off is exponer, because if you think about it, the lid is la tapa. O sea, vamos a destapar, vamos a exponer boy bands, los grupos de chicos cantantes. I don't even know how you would translate them in Spanish. And we're going to look at that term because that term, well, some boy bands consider derogatory. So let's take a look at our intro because as always, I put a lot of expressions, collocations, and different concepts in there for you to learn. I started out by saying although. And remember, although is aunque, but you can also say although or even though. So even though or although, they are generally considered a flash in the pan. So considered is obviously considerado. We could also say thought of. They are thought of as a flash in the pan. And a flash in the pan, when I looked at the translation, is flor de un día. So something that's really popular for a short time. Then I said their staying power and popularity is ever present. And the word staying power means stamina. It means the ability to endure, aguante o resistencia. Their staying power and popularity is ever present. And the word ever present, which is a hyphenated word, means siempre presente, constante. So yeah, what am I getting at? We love to make fun of boy bands. Todos nos burlamos de ellos. We love to mock them. Otra forma de decir burlarse de. But in the end, there they are, selling albums, selling out stadiums, and who's laughing at who? The expression we use in English is they're laughing their way to the bank. Ellos están riéndose camino al banco. Nos riemos de ellos, pero ellos están cobrando. Then I said they make the masses or las masas, swoon. And to swoon is to become overcome with emotion. It says here, embelearse. Ooh, that's a new one for me. Extasiarse. It can even be used to say desmayarse de la emoción, to pass out or to faint. And the word sway means mecerse o balancearse. Vamos, mover ese culete, to sway, S-W-A-Y, as they sweep us off our feet. And to sweep somebody off of their feet is to cause people to fall in love with them. I think in Spanish you say caer a los pies de alguien. And it's literally the word sweep is barrer. It's an irregular verb, sweep, swept, swept. So they sweep us off our feet with their swagger. And swagger is this kind of walk, pavonear, contoneo, it says here. It's kind of walking around like you're important. But hey, that's part of the image. Then you heard my attempt at singing with a little auto-tune, and we're going to talk about how boy bands use auto-tune to sound better. And finally, I said we're going backstage. Remember, in English, we don't say I was in the backstage. We just say a secas, I was backstage. So we're going backstage past the buff bouncers. And the word buff we looked at in the Harley-Davidson episode. It means abrillantar, but it also means muscular, right? Musculoso. So the buff bouncers. And the word bouncers we learned in the nightclub episode. So what's the moral of the story? What's the lesson here? You need to listen to all the FYI episodes. This is our 44th episode, so you have 43 other episodes and topics that you can learn about. And remember, the bonus audio that is usually reserved for my patrons, eventually, a la larga, I make it free. So if you're patient, if you can wait a few months, well, you will get the bonus audio because eventually I make it free. But if you can't wait, like many other students, you can join us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Alberto Alonso. And as many of you guys know, this is a self-produced podcast. So all the time, all the energy I put into it is for free, unless you guys are here doing your part and being amazing students. And remember, you can get involved on all different levels, from just €3 a month, and this is where you are supporting the work I do, and I'm giving you some bonus stuff, all the way to interstellar levels, to people who get private classes with me. So the best thing to do is take a look, échale un vistazo at my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Alberto Alonso, and you can take a look at all the different options. As I always tell you guys too, if you want more information or simply want to get a sample, you want to see what it's like, well, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to share a sample with you. And now that we're talking about my patrons, I want to send a huge thank you to all of you. As you know, you're amazing people, wonderful students, and this show would not be possible without you. So on behalf of all the listeners, thanks to my patrons, and a nice shout out to my super duper students, Sabela, Tony, Roberto, Jose Maria, Mila, Alex, Patricio, Edgar, and Loles. And don't forget about my interstellar students, Carmen, Diego, Diana, and Pilar. You guys rock. Thank you so much for being there and learning and laughing with me. If you guys want more information, check it out at patreon.com/Alberto Alonso. We'll be expecting you. Te estaremos esperando. Let's start off then where we should start off, at the beginning. What is a boy band? Let's look at the definition of a boy band. And I'm going to read it right off Google here. It is loosely defined, so loosely no es 100%, it's loosely defined, como la palabra suelta. So again, this is a loose definition, and it's a vocal group consisting of young male singers. And we're going to talk about girl groups too. Don't worry, I just thought it would be easier in the title to call it boy bands. So I should change that definition to male or female singers, usually in their teenage years or in their 20s at the time of formation, singing love songs marketed towards young women and men as well, as we know. It says many boy bands dance as well as sing, usually giving highly choreographed performances. So I think that makes sense. You know, a group of people singing and dancing together in sync. Hey, wait, did I just do that on purpose? Yeah, you caught me. In sync, sincronizado. And we're going to find out a little bit later on where In Sync got their name from. It's not only a play on words, un juego de palabras de sincronizado, S-Y-N-C-H, es como se escribiría de verdad. De hecho, de ahí sacamos la palabra lip sync. To lip sync es hacer playback. But we need to start at the beginning. Where did all this start? What was the first boy band? Well, according to our definition, we could say the Fab Four. Who's the Fab Four? Well, the Fab Four is another way we say the Beatles. I know, don't kill me, don't crucify me. Not yet, let me explain. Well, think about it. I just read you the definition. A vocal group consisting of young male singers, usually in their teenage years. They sing love songs. She loves you, yeah, 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 and I want to hold your hand. I mean, right there. They even had a specific look and an image, and they had a choreography. It was planned. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but the Beatles is rock. It's not pop. Yeah, but nowhere in the definition does it define the kind of music that a boy band makes. So technically, the Beatles are the quintessential boy band. I mean, they had everything. They had that staying power. They made the masses swoon and sway, and they swept the whole world off its feet with their swagger. So no better boy band than the Beatles. Now, we have to clear something up, though. The word boy band didn't exist then, so nobody called the Beatles a boy band, but if we look at the definition, that's what it is. And obviously, they inspired many other boy bands. Many of you know the Monkees. The Monkees was a band that was put together for a TV show, and they ended up obviously forming a band and touring in the end, but they started as a gimmick for a TV show. Hey, hey, we're the Monkees, and people say we're monkeying around. They were inspired by the Beatles. And my mother, you want to know how popular the Monkees were in their day, and the Beatles and these kind of boy bands. My mother went to go see the Monkees in Florida. And do you know who the opening band was? El telonero? You're not going to believe this. Jimi Hendrix. Just to show you how popular these boy bands were in that moment in time. But then I guess you could argue that there were forerunners, antecedentes, I think you say, predecessors, forerunners. And these were these barbershop quartets. Everybody go, everybody go, everybody go. Oh. You know, these are called barbershop quartets, and they sing a cappella. So these were very popular in the earlier part of the 20th century. So even before the Beatles, what were the original boy bands? Well, these guys who sat around a fire and would sing, Blue moon, you saw me standing, a blue, blue moon, blue moon. And they would harmonize. Think about the doo-wop bands of the 50s. So I guess we could break it down, desglosarlo, we could break it down into four waves, cuatro olas. We have the boy bands that peaked in the 1960s. And perhaps the most popular boy band from the 1960s, easy as 1, 2, 3, ABC, baby, you and me, girl. Jackson 5, of course. They weren't a boy band. They weren't singing pop music, dancing and singing in sync, melodic songs about love. That's a boy band. Another very popular one from this era was the Osmonds. This was a popular TV show in the United States, and one of my favorite songs is by the Osmonds. I think I love you, but what am I so afraid of? And as you can see, the songs are all lovey-dovey. They're innocent songs, and I think that's what people miss too, because nowadays with reggaeton and rap music, well, music has lost its innocence, and this music has a certain innocence, even if it's part of the plan. Then the 90s and the early 2000s. And this one I lived through. Yo viví esta. In fact, in the bonus part of today's show, I'm going to tell you about how I met some of the members of NSYNC when I lived in Florida, and I had no idea who they were. It was very embarrassing, and I'll tell you about that in the bonus part of today's show. But that's the era that I think everybody thinks about when they think about boy bands. They don't think back to the Beatles, or they don't think of the Jackson 5, but those were the predecessors. But the ones that came out of the 90s and early 2000s, well, you've got Take That, the one with Robbie Williams, Backstreet Boys. Backstreet es las callejuelas, las calles pequeñas. The Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Boyzone, Westlife. These were dominating the pop charts at that time. And then there was a little lull, un bajón, como siempre, and there was a new emergence in the 2010s. And this, we started seeing bands such as One Direction, and more importantly now, the kings of boy bands, these K-pop acts, which I think right now is, if we had to talk about the future of boy bands, it's Asia, it's K-pop. And as I said before, I didn't want to leave out, omitir, I didn't want to leave out these girl bands because they've had a huge influence as well. Just think about it. All these doo-wop groups, all these groups from the 30s, then through the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I mean, you had the Temptations with Diana Ross, some of the greatest bands ever, and they were girl bands. And the most successful ones, I believe, are the Spice Girls, with 90 million in sales, if I'm not mistaken. That was the figure I saw. It was a figure from 2020. So the Spice Girls. But you can't leave out TLC, which we've learned means tender loving care, el toque de mamá. TLC, or Destiny's Child. Oh, I love Destiny's Child. Are you kidding me? Oh, thank you, Destiny's Child, for making the 90s more bearable, más aguantable. But it's interesting. The last two I said, they were trios. Instead of quartets, they were trios. But it doesn't matter how you slice it or dice it. Da igual como lo pongas. We think of them as fleeting, como algo fugaz. But they're not. They're here to stay. And even their older albums are still popular. It reminds me of that expression that Andy Warhol coined, their 15 minutes of fame. Everybody has their 15 minutes of fame. And that's the thing. When you think of a boy band, you think that it's fleeting, that it's not going to have a long lifespan, duración de vida. And according to an article that I saw, according to swoon, the average life of a boy band is 5 to 7 years. So you've got 5 to 7 years to make that money. And why do boy bands, why don't they last? Well, first, they rely on, se apoyan en, trends, tendencias. And we all know, if you see a movie from the 1980s with a lot of different trends in it, well, it's outdated. So it doesn't age well. No envejece bien. But also because there's always one member of the group that stands out, that's head and shoulders above the rest. And if you don't believe me, I'm about to give you a bunch of examples. The first one, the Jackson 5. Who stood out? Michael Jackson. That's right. The next one, NSYNC. Who stood out? Justin Timberlake. Destiny's Child? Beyonce. The Temptations? Diana Ross. In the Osmonds, Donny Osmond was the most famous one. And the super Latin group, muy popular en los Estados Unidos, Menudo. Yo sé que lo estoy pronunciando a la americana, but Menudo, where Ricky Martin and Mark Anthony came from. And Menudo was always interesting because they changed members a menudo. Now, one of the criticisms of these boy bands is that it's not them. It's fake. They don't write their own music. It's just add water, no? Añade agua y lo tienes, as we say. Just add water. It's really the work of executives, record executives and managers who may or may not be taking all the money. But we do know one thing. They are pulling the strings. And that's very funny because NSYNC had a video where they were puppets and they cut the strings. And this video was based on real life because Lou Pearlman, now this is, you can't talk about boy bands without talking about Lou Pearlman. Now he was a manager from the United States and he founded the Backstreet Boys in 1993, NSYNC and LFO in 1995, O-Town in the year 2000, US 5 in 2005. So this guy, I mean, his job was producing super boy bands, and he did a great job. But there's just one problem. In 2006, he was accused of running one of the largest and longest running Ponzi schemes, you say piramides, right? A Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme in US history. And he left over 300 million US dollars in debt. La B muda en la palabra deuda. $300 million in debt, and he was apprehended. He pled guilty, se declaró, to plead guilty en pasado. He pled guilty to conspiracy, money laundering, blanqueo de dinero, and making false statements during a bankruptcy proceeding. So let me sum it up for you. Te lo resumo. This guy was a crook. Era un criminal. And nobody knows that more than the boys who worked for him. He stole tons of money from them, and they took him to court. Many of them took him to court because they wanted their money. This guy was a crook. And in 2008, this guy Lou Pearlman, was convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison. And in 2016, he died in federal custody. Now, I don't like to be cruel, but I imagine that not too many people were mourning his death. To mourn es estar de luto. There is a documentary you guys can check out. If you can't find it, let me know. But it's about Lou Pearlman and, well, the whole boy band thing. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being very interesting. And some other controversy, aside from the fact that they don't make their own decisions and somebody else is there doing everything for them, picking out their clothes, writing their songs. In fact, some have even been accused of having session musicians or session singers recording the vocals. And it's no secret that the music industry has overused, ha sobreusado, this auto-tune effect. And we're going to wrap up. Vamos a ir acabando ahora. But remember, if you want the bonus audio, you can become a patron, or you can find out. I'll give you a free sample. Just contact me. Remember, if you're not following me on social media, you should do that too, because I'm constantly posting content to help you in English. So another reason that boy bands get this bad rap, mala imagen, is, well, everything I said before, that they don't do their own work, which it seems like that's changing now. Now the boy bands of the future are realizing the importance of writing their own music and making their own decisions, that artistic freedom that any artist is looking for, such as Katy Perry and all these who write their own songs. But also remember, it's based on image. And what happens as the years go on? We get older, we get fatter, we get slower, más lentos. So you're not going to be that sexy heartthrob, buenorro, that heartthrob, that pinup boy, no? De postres, from what you guys had as Super Pop. Don't think I don't remember Super Pop. And I remember these guys on the cover of every magazine. They were the biggest thing since sliced bread. Una expresión muy graciosa en inglés. Lo más grande desde que empezaron a cortar pan en lonchas, en trozos. But no stone is left unturned. Y esta expresión significa que se cuidan de todos los detalles. No stone is left unturned. They even give them roles to play, such as the baby, the bad boy, the shy one. Look at the Spice Girls. Scary Spice, Posh Spice. And you know what? I'm going to end this episode right now. Remember, there is bonus stuff, but the free part, I'm going to end it by saying we love to mock them. We love to make fun of them. But occasionally, you'll find yourself singing along with them. And on that note, it's time to say...